spent the evening at Indian Casino up north of Topeka. We eventually got the videotapes from the casino. Looked like they were having a good time.
Mike Cisco was a wonderful man. He loved my mom. They were perfect for each other.
My dad was really in my life growing up. If you can picture Tim Allen from Home Improvement, that guy, that's him. He was really my hero.
My mom was an amazing woman. She didn't have enemies. She did not have one enemy.
My dad and his fiancée Karen were murdered. I saw a bunch of tape around the house. My grandma was sitting in there, and she just told me that they had been shot.
Both of them with multiple gunshot wounds. There was no struggle. The victims were doing absolutely nothing and may not have seen it coming at all.
I lost my best friend. I lost my rock.
It's unnerving to think that somebody could sneak into a house and do this and leave quietly, and nobody knows about it until the next day.
It's hard to swallow, and it's hard to believe. It's insane.
What we're left with is an emotional killing. It's an emotional execution. Whoever it was that did this hated these people. They wanted them dead, and they wanted to make sure they were dead.
I want everybody to know what I know.
Are you afraid for your own life, your own safety?
Yeah, I am.
What are you going to do to protect yourself?
Look over my shoulder all the time.
Haunted. Tonight's 48 Hours Mystery. The mystery continues in 90 seconds.
The day started off like any other day for my wife and I. It was a happy day, and it was a Sunday.
It was July 7th, 2002. Harold and Betty Warswick were going to meet their daughter Karen Harkness and her boyfriend Mike Cisco for a Sunday afternoon fish fry. But when they arrived at their daughter's house, the door was locked.
I rang the doorbell and knocked on the glass and couldn't raise anybody. I thought, this is strange.
Mike's mom, Carol Cisco Engler, was also invited that day.
The front door was locked, which was unusual, and so we went around to the back, and the back door was open just a little bit. And so we walked in, couldn't find anyone.
The house was quiet. Mike and Karen were nowhere to be found.
Harold went downstairs, which was Karen's bedroom.
So as I got down there, just as I got to the foot of the stairs, I could see Karen. She was laying face down on the bed, head kind of off the right side of the bed, and her arm was off there. And I said, oh, Christ. I knew she was dead. I reached over and touched her, but she was cold. And then I found Mike on the outside of the bed, and I could see that he'd been shot a number of times and had lost a lot of blood.
It didn't seem real, you know. It just seemed like a dream. But Harold wouldn't let Betty or I go downstairs, and I'm very glad he didn't. I've got my own horrible scenes of it anyway. And then immediately we called 911.
I got a radio call just after 2 o'clock on July 7, 2002. It was reported 2 dead bodies in a basement.
It was 7 years ago when Topeka detective Richard Voley got the case that would haunt him to this day.
Well, the first thought is you gotta consider a robbery.
Mike and Karen had been dating for about 4 years. On the night of the murders, they had gone to a casino north of Topeka and had won big.
Electronics were all there. There was no forced entry. There was just nothing to suggest a robbery. In fact, we ended up finding a fairly substantial amount of cash in the pockets of the victim.
With robbery ruled out, Detective Voley focused on the victims.
They were such a sweet couple. Mike was so happy with her. He really loved Karen, and I know Karen loved Mike. She took up fishing, and they went on camping trips.
It's a mystery, Who would want to kill Karen and her boyfriend? Voley retraced the couple's evening, starting at the casino.
Looked like they were having a good time, didn't have any issues with anyone. Casinos have cameras everywhere, and we didn't see any indication that they'd had a struggle with anybody, any kind of
Well, no one suspicious with following them out?
No.
53-year-old Karen Harkness was divorced with 2 grown children, Chad and Aaron.
I remember telling her on several occasions that if I could be half the mom that she was to me, that I would be the best mom in the world.
It was a surprise to everybody that this would happen to somebody like her.
But Detective Voley was unsentimental in his investigation and looked at Karen's son Chad and at Karen's ex-husband as possible suspects.
I was asked to come down to the police station. I was hooked up to a polygraph machine and asked if I had murdered my mother or in any way participated in the murder of my mother.
They looked at your father. He had to take a polygraph.
He took a polygraph as well.
Both Chad and his father were eliminated as suspects. But if Karen wasn't the intended target, then maybe it was Mike. His son Dustin couldn't believe anyone would want to kill his father.
And everyone that I saw that knew him, would, shake his hand and give him a big smile.
47-year-old Mike Sisko sold welding equipment in Topeka and was a divorced father who had custody of his 2 teenage children.
He was a wonderful son, and he was a very good father.
But Mike was having real problems with his daughter, Haley.
I wasn't happy with my dad. I wasn't happy with my mom. I wasn't happy at my school.
In the months before the murder, 17-year-old Haley Sisko was angry at everything. But it was her father who she really turned against.
I hated my dad. I flat out hated him.
Things only got worse when Haley spent more and more time with her boyfriend, Chris Seal.
My dad hated him.
Chris was the bad boy. Definitely didn't follow the straight and narrow.
You ultimately moved out of the house.
My dad gave me an ultimatum. Either you follow my rules or you move out. And I moved in with Chris, and then my dad was killed.
Because of that tension with her father, Haley and her boyfriend attracted police attention.
They searched Chris's house completely.
Mike's sister, Kathy Boots, and her husband, Mark, thought maybe the young man and Haley could be involved in the murders.
She was acting so irrationally, no one knew what was going on.
So at the same time Haley had to deal with the murder of her father, she also had to defend herself and her boyfriend from police suspicions.
Me and Chris were interviewed. I mean, they came and talked to us. We were on their list of who did this.
Like some of the other family members, police wanted them to take a polygraph.
He immediately submitted to a lie detector test, accounted for his whereabouts. There was nothing there.
All the checking that we've done on Haley and her boyfriend, there was nothing there that suggested that she could be responsible for this.
All the leads in Topeka went nowhere.
If money's a motive, that's easy to track. If revenge is a motive, that's a little bit easier to track. But there was nothing that was in Mike and Karen's lives that would lead to revenge. I mean, they didn't do anything to anybody. We just don't have any ideas.
But Mike Sisko knew who might want him dead, and he told his brother-in-law a week before the murders.
And he said, Mark, you're going to wake up some morning and you're going to find out I'm dead, and you're going to know who did it.
"7 years since the shocking murders of Mike Sisko and Karen Harkness. No arrests. A mystery.
This is a cold case. It really has to almost start from anew.
Private investigators Paul Cialino and Joe Mora are on the job. They have come to Topeka, Kansas for 48 hours to examine the case.
We want to thank you all for coming tonight.
Talk to the families and try to move the investigation forward.
We want to go in a direction to make sure that no stone is left unturned.
Getting some justice for your sister, for your daughter, for your son, for your dad, okay, your brother.
Their first stop?
The fence in the back's been changed.
The crime scene.
Well, this is the place, Paul. And that's where the bodies were found.
It's been a long time. The house has been sold and the room changed. But the detectives still think walking these rooms can reveal things about the killer.
I don't think this was done by a cold-blooded killer, professional assassin yet.
It was done by somebody who gave it a lot of thought, though.
Yeah, I agree with you. I gave it a lot of thought.
The people that got killed here knew the assailant. This was somebody who had a terrific hatred for these two people.
I think that was the point of entry.
Next, the detectives talk to the families.
You guys were the ones that found him, right?
Yes.
Harold?
You're Karen's brother.
That's correct.
Tim, you're Mike's brother.
Right. My older brother, 8 years older than me.
You were with Mike right before he got killed, weren't you?
I was.
Mike's brother-in-law, Mark Boots, had been fishing with Mike just before the murders.
While we were on that trip in the Ozarks, the week before the murder, I was sitting with Mike out back, actually smoking a cigar with him. He shared with me that that he and Karen were going to get married.
Mark was overjoyed for his brother-in-law, but Mike believed the announcement of the marriage wasn't going to be good news for everyone.
He said, I'm afraid to tell Dana that that Karen and I are going to get married. I'm afraid what she's going to do, how she's going to react to this.
Dana is Dana Chandler, Mike's ex-wife. They were married in 1982 and lived in Colorado. Mike and Dana had 2 children together, Haley in 1985 and Dustin nearly 2 years later.
We had a pretty normal family growing up. I mean, well, I thought we did. You know, we'd eat dinner together, we went to church.
I thought everybody was pretty happy and, you know, things were really going well.
But it didn't last. Mike moved the family to Kansas, his home state. But Dana was miserable there. She was drinking heavily, and the marriage started falling apart.
She did have a really bad drinking problem. Whenever she drinks, her actions are just way out of control. I mean, it's like she has no mind. It's just...
They would yell and scream and fight, and like, it would just go on. And I couldn't sleep. I'm just laying up there going, this isn't good.
It was a bitter divorce that took years to settle.
It was a very rough divorce. We were torn in the middle with our mom bringing us in and making us choose, pawning us against our dad, saying he's a horrible person. She wanted us to hate him.
The court found that Mike was the more stable parent and awarded him full custody of Haley and Dustin. Dana was ordered to pay child support.
Was your mom upset about that?
Yeah, she was real upset, actually. Yeah, really upset her.
How often does a father get custody of his children? I mean, it's very...
Well, I mean, how often do you read a file like this and everything favors the father?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's very rare.
It's extremely rare. So obviously there were issues there that was well documented that things turned in favor of the father, and I think that's one of the reasons why she was just irate to no end.
The marriage finally ended in 1998, but that wasn't the end of Mike's nightmare.
She told the kid she was going to destroy him, some way or another.
After the divorce, Dana left Kansas and moved around. But that didn't stop her from harassing her ex-husband.
She'd walk the alleys behind the house.
So there's a history of her surveilling, watching, stalking.
Multiple times we'd be together, and all of a sudden we'd go, whoop, there went Dana. And now at this point, she was living, you know, out of the town or out of the state, and just show up and drive by.
She was willing to travel great distances to show up back in his life.
It was ugly. She must have spent every waking minute planning the next thing she was going to pull.
In his own hand, Mike kept careful records in his day planner of the bizarre stalking habits of his ex-wife. June 23rd, Dana called police, accused me of drinking when picked up Dustin. July 28th, Dana stalking neighborhood at 8:30, caught her, she left. November 12th, Dana came in-house while I was at Karen's from 7 to 11, went through stuff, caught her walking out back door when I came in, called police. Dana didn't hide her bizarre behavior from her children.
She actually brought me and Haley along, and she was definitely watching him and seeing what he was doing, and I mean, she was definitely spying on him, and just the fact that she could bring her kids to do that, you know, it's just crazy.
Dana also harassed Karen, so much so that Karen actually told her daughter Erin that she had considered breaking up with Mike.
My mom would speak of her often. She would leave messages on my mom's phone. She would call her pretty regularly, and you know, my mom quit answering the phone, and Dana would then leave messages on her voice.
What kind of messages, Erin?
Horrible. They don't know that they really made a lot of sense. Just very psychotic babble.
Kathy Booth was staying with her brother Mike when Dana pulled one of her more bizarre acts of harassment.
About 3 in the morning, I heard a noise, and it was coming from the backyard. It was like springs. It was just a strange noise.
Mike was awakened by the noise as well.
And he went to the window and said, "Oh my God." Dana on the kid's trampoline, laughing hysterically.
I think Dana was not going to allow Mike to have this new life with Karen.
Mike's family believes that Mike told Dana of his wedding plans when they last spoke, just 2 days before the murders.
She just never got on with her life, ever. It was an obsession. It was her job to stalk them.
It was that obsession that convinced family members Dana Chandler was somehow involved in the murders of Mike and Karen.
I don't want it to be her. I don't want it to be her. It's her.
But the families believe evidence that might have implicated Dana Chandler was lost. Lost by a failed police investigation.
They're not used to dealing with double homicides like this in Topeka, Kansas.
The fire department was here first.
Harold Warswick thought there were so many cops in and out of the house that first day that they compromised the crime scene.
I thought, well, if there's any good evidence down here, they were walking on it. If there was any evidence there, they had destroyed it.
They didn't preserve the crime scene. They didn't collect evidence as they should have. They destroyed evidence that could have helped them get a conviction in this case.
But it wasn't just what might have been destroyed, it was what was left behind.
They didn't even collect cigarette butts.
Why would that matter? Even though Mike and Karen were smokers, so is Dana Chandler.
I told him that I knew that she was a heavy smoker, 3-4 packs a day. And I know that first week I said I would certainly look at cigarette butts. I said there's no way that she can go very long without smoking.
I was surprised to see a wine bottle sitting out in the room.
Mike Warswick, Karen's brother, packed up Karen's house before it was sold.
And then as I kind of searched the rest of the room, I looked in the closet, and there was another wine bottle here on the floor, again almost empty.
He found the empty wine bottles in a spare bedroom just days after the police had finished their forensic work.
I just thought, guys, this seems weird. My sister's so neat and orderly that this just seemed, you know, like the aftermath of a party or something.
Family members now suspect Dana Chandler drank the wine while waiting for Mike and Karen to come home.
It was only 3 or 4 days later, unfortunately after I'd thrown the bottles away, that I began to say to myself, you know, this was wrong.
Do you think any mistakes were made in this case?
I know there were.
Well,
because I made some of them.
Mistakes or not, the family's convinced Detective Voley to focus on Dana Chandler shortly after the murders.
They pointed us towards Mike's ex-wife and told us that she lived in Denver.
Everybody kept saying Dana Chandler?
Yes. Yes.
Did that surprise you?
Yeah, based on the distance, essentially. Somebody in Denver to drive 500 miles to Topeka seems like quite a stretch.
After Detective Voley took a closer look at Dana Chandler, she became a serious suspect. But there were problems. The murder weapon was never found, and Dana said she had an alibi. Voley couldn't find any evidence to put her in Kansas the weekend of the murders.
It's frustrating that you know that there's something there, and in this case, we just haven't been able to find it.
Nevertheless, police strongly suspected Dana Chandler was involved in the murders. But Dana was never arrested or charged.
We got some folks that are hurting, and they're going to be hurting until somebody's in jail for this.
The families hope that Cialino and Mora, with fresh eyes, can bring new life to the case.
That was hefty money that she was paying, huh?
The private investigators decide to break down Dana's alibi, that she was in Colorado the weekend of the murders.
Back in July 6th and July 7th of 2002, Dana Chandler lived in this apartment complex.
Just a few days after the murders, Dana Chandler gave police a detailed alibi. Mora and Cialino say it's full of holes.
She claims that on July 6th, which was a Saturday of 2002, that she ran some errands around town.
Dana said she bought cigarettes at a grocery store, then a replacement cigarette lighter at AutoZone, at Target, a thermos, and snacks. Last stop, an Amoco station to fill up her car.
We know that she went to get some items, the type of items one would buy if they're going to do a long road trip in a car.
She said she spent Saturday night at home, but a watchful neighbor never saw her car that evening.
He knew everything about the car, and he said he always saw it here, but on that particular weekend, there was no sight of the vehicle.
And phone records show that she did not answer calls made to her when she said she was home. Dana's alibi continues through Sunday. Her story? She was hiking in the mountains the day the bodies were discovered.
She wasn't in the mountains. I've been in those mountains. I've been in the route that she said she took. Doesn't fit. I was wondering if you had any maps in reference to some hiking trails.
Okay.
Dana said she was on a trail about 2 miles outside of Granby, Colorado.
Is there any hiking trails that would be within 2 miles of Granby?
As far as National Forest Service land, no.
So that would be private within that 2 mile area.
And within the 2 mile area, yes.
Dana had indicated after hiking in Granby that she had headed north.
If she drove north, as she told police, she would have entered Rocky Mountain National Park here, an entrance that records the license plate of every car on surveillance video.
The Topeka Police Department and their detectives came here, reviewed the video footage, and for the date of July 7th of 2002, there was no documentation of her being here. So that puts a big hole in her alibi.
I bought a pack of cigarettes down the street here, and the security tape picked me up. That's an alibi. Dana just says, I'm in my apartment, I'm alone, I don't talk to anyone, I don't get on my computer. It's really not an alibi because nobody saw her. There is nothing to put Dana in the state of Colorado for a 27-hour period.
During the original investigation, police searched Dana Chandler's apartment and found perhaps the most intriguing clue of all. A gas can, one of two she bought just before the murders, but neglected to mention in her detailed alibi to police.
She told the police all the things she bought at different places, but she never talked about the gas cans. Why would you need 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline?
The only logical reason is Dana doesn't want to have to stop for gas when she's hot-footing it out of Kansas after having committed a double homicide.
I want answers. I want to know why. I want to know everything.
For the past 7 years, Haley and Dustin Cisco have tried to come to terms with the painful possibility that their mother may have murdered their father.
Once I kind of thought about it, I was absolutely positive that, Dana did it, and I was just in shock.
You don't want to believe your own mother, who, has been in your life, your whole life, and claims to love you, and at some point loved your dad enough to be married for 15 years, and then kill him? Oh, that's hard to swallow. That's too much.
Remember, Dana Chandler spoke to police 4 days after the murders. Since then, she has refused to talk to them again.
I asked her if she killed my dad. I told her to tell me she killed my dad. I already know you killed my dad. Just come be straight up with me. She's just said, I can't talk about it. My lawyers advised me not to talk about it.
For years, Haley has been talking about it with her mother and secretly recording the conversations.
I think that the only way I can really move on with a relationship with you is if you can just tell me yourself that you did it. I was in Denver that weekend. You may have been in Denver on Saturday morning and early afternoon, but then you had plenty of time to get to Kansas by Saturday night at midnight. Anyway, I was not in Kansas at Saturday night at midnight. I was not in Kansas at all that weekend. Well, until you want to talk about it, I can't have a relationship with you.
She gains entrance and hides in the house and waits for their arrival.
Private Detective Cialino and Mora believe Dana Chandler could do more to clear her name if she's really innocent.
If she's truly innocent, she would do everything that's feasible to prove her innocence to her 2 children.
In June, Mora sent Dana Chandler an email asking her to meet and discuss the case.
I think it's imperative as investigators that we have the opportunity to interview you in reference to anything you could add that would clear you as a suspect in this case.
Dana wrote back that same day.
She wrote, "Dear Joseph, thank you for your efforts to investigate to find out what happened to my children's dad. I realize I am a suspect in this case. However, I can assure you I had nothing to do with it. Thank you again for your efforts. Best regards, Dana."
Joe wrote back, pressing Dana to meet. This time, Dana didn't reply to Joe. Instead, she wrote to Haley, explaining why she would not agree to a meeting with the detectives. She wrote, "It seems as though they simply want to interrogate me. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, this will be solved. I hope that you will realize the truth and know that I am innocent. Mom."
She will never know what she's put me through, and my brother is the same way. She's hurt us so bad and doesn't even realize it. She wants to go skiing next weekend. It's pathetic.
In an effort to revive the case, in 2007, Topeka Police commissioned an independent analysis of the evidence by retired New York Lieutenant Commander Vernon Geberth. 48 Hours obtained a copy and asked Mora and Cialino to examine it.
The Topeka Police Department, they hire a retired expert in homicide. And frankly, he writes a magnificent report laying this thing out.
The report concluded Dana Chandler is the one and only person who had the motive, means, and opportunity to commit these murders.
I've heard complaints that the DA is not really prosecuting and moving forward with this case because it's a circumstantial case.
And that's probably true, but a lot of cases are won on circumstantial, particularly as strong as this one.
Robert Hecht, Topeka's district attorney from 2001 to 2009, never prosecuted the case and says he was never given that report.
It's not admissible in any court, but it's really the blueprint to an indictment for this homicide. And it's well done, but, you know, we could use it for toilet paper because nobody's reading it.
With the help of the report, Cialino lays out a possible scenario for the crime.
So sometime on July 6th in Denver, Dana's here at home, and she gets in her car, and she drives across Colorado into Kansas, and she gets to Topeka approximately 8 hours after she leaves there. She sets up at Mike and Karen's house.
Mike and Karen left the casino at 1:30 in the morning, arriving home around 2 a.m.
Dana sees them coming down the street. She walks down the stairs, goes into the utility room, quietly closes the door shut, and sits there with a loaded gun in her hand waiting for them to come in. They get a little comfortable, they get into bed. Dana comes out of the room silently and shoots them both 5 times apiece.
No one heard a thing.
She shoots him, gets in her car, she goes straight north, so she's out of the state fast. And the minute she crossed the body of water, my guess is that gun went right into it. Here comes the 5-gallon gasoline cans. Dana has got to get some mileage and time between her and this murder scene, because if she gets picked up on a traffic stop, if she goes through a toll booth with a camera, if she has to stop for gas, someone's going to document it. So Dana is going to pull over to the side of a road and drop 10 gallons of gas that she's pre-purchased in Colorado into the tank of her car so she can ride home without having to make a stop.
At 6:01 p.m. on Sunday, Dana Chandler goes back on the grid. Receipts show her in Colorado buying gas and washing her car.
I think Dana gave it a lot of thought. She probably wrote it out somewhere. She probably had a checklist. She had a plan.
Despite the stalled investigation, Dana's children feel to the core that their mother killed their father.
She's so unpredictable. I really don't know why she did it.
If you could say something to your mom right now, and you talk and she can hear you, what would you say to her?
Why did you do this to me? Why are you doing this to my brother? Do you care about us? Because all of your actions say you don't.
For Haley, the pain is excruciating because of the time she missed with her father when they were fighting before his death. time that she can never get back.
Robbed. I was completely robbed of that last part of the time we had. It's the biggest regret I will ever have.
Today, Haley Cisco is 24 years old and remains extremely close to her 22-year-old brother, Dustin. She now lives in Colorado, and her mother, Dana Chandler, haunts her.
And you really believe in your heart that the killer was your mom?
After talking to her numerous times since it's happened, it's written on the wall. It is written on her forehead. No question. No question.
Do you ever want to see her again?
I don't really see any real reason to. Not really.
For years, Haley and Dustin have been estranged from their mother. Then, out of the blue, almost 2 years ago, Dana made a new effort to reestablish her relationship with Haley.
She wants to have a relationship with me and my brother. She wants me to live with her, go to school, not have to worry about working, and just have a normal mother-daughter relationship.
Haley is a little afraid of her mother. For years, she refused to even tell her where she lived. But that didn't stop Dana from tracking her daughter down last year.
I open the door expecting a salesman and see her staying there. Completely throws me out of whack. I mean, I physically shake. I know that she's very capable of coming in my house, looking through my things, jumping my fence.
In April, Haley again secretly recorded a phone conversation where she discussed with her mother key pieces of evidence.
Well, I appreciate you, hearing me out, and I really want to believe that you want to get through this and help me get through this too. I hope you know that it just kills me. No, Haley. I know it's been a horrible, horrible situation.
Remember the gas cans she purchased just hours before the murders? Her story now is she bought them for a friend.
Okay. What was her name? Can get a hold of her? I mean, if she could say that, that would just be awesome. Haley, I have no idea.
And what about those missed calls that went unanswered when Dana said she was supposed to be home that weekend?
I mean, why wasn't your phone answered that whole weekend? I mean, there's no incoming or outgoing calls at all. Okay, what's going on with the cell phone? I mean, Haley, as far as my cell phone goes, I was not able to pick up a signal in the mountains. Okay, so you went up to the mountains? Did you spend the night in the mountains then, like that weekend?
Right there, Dana radically changes her story by saying she spent the night of the murders in the mountains, not in her apartment, as she told police.
Nothing seems to add up what Dana is saying in reference to her alibi. And she put herself on the record with that alibi. These are Dana's own words, with an attorney present, that she said she did on that Saturday and Sunday.
We wanted to talk to Dana Chandler about the case, but she has refused repeated requests from 48 Hours to sit down and talk.
Hi, Dana. Harold Dallas, CBS News.
We were able to track her down one morning in Denver.
Your children would like for you to talk. Pardon? Can't you just talk to us for a moment? Did you know anything about the death of Michael and Karen?
I have no idea what happened to Michael and Karen.
There's some people out here who think that you had something to do with it.
I know that.
Would you like to say something to those people?
Dana Chandler is now 49 years old and hoping to become a certified public accountant. The families of Mike and Karen say she has gotten away with murder.
She needs to account for her actions. There's still time.
I just want her to give the kids their lives back, her own children. Let them know what happened. Just admit to it. Something. Don't leave them just hanging like she's done all these years.
It changed my whole life. I mean, it completely redirected the track of my life.
In January 2009, Topeka got a new district attorney. Chad Taylor says the Harkness-Cisco case is now a priority.
I hope that through a thorough review of all of the evidence, getting a fresh set of eyes looking at it, I hope we're able to bring justice for those families. There is some additional evidence that is going to be submitted for testing.
Back in 2002, police collected some chewing gum found at the crime scene. They are hoping for a DNA match to the killer.
Do you think the families will ever get justice in this case?
For their sake and for the sake of this community, I pray they do.
Mora and Cialino say Dana Chandler could still face criminal prosecution for the murders.
I think that if he looks at the case, allows a little cooperation with his office in the Topeka Police Department, that they can actually take this case and they can still salvage this case and they can bring Dana to trial. That will take one tough, smart district attorney, and I'm hoping this young guy's got the gusto to go for it.
How do you wake up from this bad dream?
Get justice.
What do you think should happen to your mom if she did in fact kill Karen and your dad?
Go to jail forever. If not, death penalty.
Dana Chandler proclaims her innocence to this day, especially to her daughter.
I just wish that you would, in your heart, know that I had nothing to do with it, because that is the truth. I wish that you could just realize that was the truth.
I think losing my dad and Karen was hard and horrible, but accepting that my mom, who loves me and who would be there for me, is not that person, that hurts more. That hurts more than my dad's death.